Parents visiting us should know your children are very safe. The fire alarms work very well, and there's a pretty good response time from the fire department. It's my great pleasure today to introduce some pretty fantastic students here at Gonzaga who've been doing digital humanities projects in their free time and also in their classroom lives. So I'd like to first introduce myself. My name is Katey Roden. I am a professor here in the English department and also Women's and Gender Studies, and I'm currently the director of the College in Arts and Sciences Digital Humanities Initiative. So I'm pretty excited that we were able to get this outstanding group of students who have been doing digital humanities work before our initiative even existed. So the good news is digital humanities has been happening at Gonzaga for a while, and now we're formalizing it with the initiative. So today we'll hear from 8 students representing a range of departments within the College of Arts and Science. And although we'll be very tempted to applaud after each of their performances and presentations, I'll ask that you hold those applause to the end so we can just give them a resounding set of applause collectively. We'll also reserve some time at the end of the presentation, so if anybody has questions, feel free to ask away. So we'll do individual group presentations, and then we'll all sort of do a little roundtable discussion of some basic questions. So first and foremost, I'd like to ask Megan Landsberger and Katey Roden to come up and talk about their project, the Digital Humanities and Jesuit Archives, which they completed in a Native American religions class taught by Dr. Emily Clark. So, ladies, and you should just be able to look right through. Awesome. Cool. Can everybody hear okay? I don't think we're a big enough room that we need microphones. All right, head.
So like Professor Roden said, I'm Megan.
I'm Kaya.
And we analyzed and did some work with the Jesuit archives that are here on campus and relating those to a Native American indigenous community. So real quick of what our project was. If you're not familiar with the King Island Indigenous Group, they are a group of indigenous people who live off the coast of Alaska. And in the early 1900s, the Jesuits actually went to King Island and spent a significant amount of time living with the community and trying to learn and teach them the ways of Catholicism and Christianity. So during that time period where the Jesuits were there, they did an awesome job documenting everything that they did and who they spoke to and what went on, but that information came back with them and is actually sitting in our library. So the actual current King Island community had no communication, or they had no idea what these Jesuits did and what they said and all of the pictures that were taken. So the goal of our project was to create a website that could be accessible to the native King Islanders today so that they could see what the Jesuits thought of their society 100 years ago.
So essentially we had pictures that we scanned on a scanner, and we had primary sources from Father Bellarmine Lafortune himself that he wrote in 1913 that was actually really interesting to read, and we'll see some of those later. First, with some of the pictures, we had, so basically what we decided to look at is we had a trend to find trends in the pictures, and we looked at clothing, family structure, and the natives in terms of a Jesuit perspective. So as you can see in this picture, the man on the left is wearing mostly skins and furs with mucklucks, and the man on the right has a very traditional westernized hat with a jacket and pants, but he's still wearing the mucklucks. And the family on the right is essentially all westernized. The man is wearing a button-up with a tie, no skins, no furs, all boots, no mucklucks. So he's very, very traditional, and even the baby's wearing a traditional baby garb, not the cuspucks and mucklucks that they wore.
So something else that we picked out as being pretty significant from all of these photos that we uploaded was the fact that the family structure was changing with the arrival of the Jesuits and other European settlers. So these pictures we thought did a really good job of exemplifying that. It might be hard to tell from first look, but this photo on the on the left shows a family who was living in the King Island community, and the father of that family is actually a miner who came in. So they are an interracial family, which was starting up in that community. And on the right, it's actually kind of hard to tell, but written on the back by a Jesuit is half-breed children. So that was something that the Jesuits were taking note of, and the family dynamic structure of the King Island community was changing while the Jesuits were there.
So the last thing that we noticed was how the Jesuits saw these native island. So essentially on the left, you can see that it's a family. They're wearing traditional westernized clothing, no mucklucks, no cussbucks or anything. And if you look closely on the right, there's a cross on her chest, and we got to interpret this in terms of that the Jesuits had a certain interest in these people, or this family in particular. Either they were baptized into the Catholic religion, or they were not. They were refusing to be baptized in the Catholic religion. But we can tell by their clothing that they were transitioning into that period. So that was just interesting for us to notice that it's the exact same picture, but with just a little tiny change, just to give us a chance to interpret what we saw.
So these are some letters that we also took the time to analyze, and these were written by Father Bellarmine La Fortune, who was one of the main people who lived with the King Islanders. And this letter really stuck out to us because it serves as a warning to a King Islander man whose wife had recently died. She did not accept the Catholic faith, and so Bellarmine La Fortune is taking the opportunity here to say your wife did not live a correct moral life, and you will meet much the same fate as her if you do not listen to us and accept our ways that we are trying to help you with. So we found that to be a really interesting thing that is portrayed in the pictures as well as in these letters.
So we can just show you our website.
So we developed a website, and everyone in our class was responsible for finding some sort of a theme that they could pick out from these images, and all of these groups of 2 or 3 students worked together for multiple weeks to put together a big website that you can peruse, and this is available to the King Island community, so they can see these pictures of their ancestors. They can look through and see what life was like in their community 100 years ago. And that's available to the public, so you can totally peruse that if you feel like it. So this project we thought was really inspiring, and we were really glad that we got the opportunity to do this, to work with the library and to work with an archivist and to get to do firsthand history. And so it also gave us the opportunity to actually make our own interpretations of what was going on in history. We weren't told that these people believed that. We got to come up on our own with what we thought was happening and understanding the history as it happened.
It also gave us a picture view. Normally when you read textbooks, you just get like the textbook. You don't get to see who you're working with, who you're learning about. And for us, it was really important to see like, oh, these people lived here and they worked with him. And then he wrote letter correspondence back to them, essentially. So it was just a good way to like see everything in a full view, the letters, the pictures, and then reading about it in our class just to kind of make it a full circle of a lesson.
We also had a really deep appreciation of what it means to get a Jesuit education after this experience. We weren't just stuck in a classroom learning about what the King Islanders did and what people thought about the Jesuits coming there. We got to actually delve into this issue, and that's something that's really special to a Jesuit education, and so we really appreciated that from this project.
And then the last thing that we really got out of it is we had all of the stuff stuck in the library, and we got to give it back to a community who really wanted it. They wanted to see their ancestors. They wanted to connect with the people from their past and how it really shaped their history, because the Jesuits are a big part of that history, and they really got to see firsthand of what they learned from the Jesuits.
Thank you so much for your time.
I knew we'd have a hard time not clapping. It's also good to know that that particular collection, and we have somebody going off to a rugby game, so as soon as we finish up, rugby's happening right there. Go and support our very busy, active students. It's also worth noting that that King Islander collection that Native American Religions class produced, we have a couple computers set up in the library, over in Foley Library. If you go in, they're there, they're available, and one of the archivists is there to answer any questions that you might have about Gonzaga's archives. So if you're interested and you want to click through, they're over there waiting for you. Next up, I'd like to invite Grace Muljadi, who did a fantastic history project that she's going to talk to us a little bit about. So Grace's project stemmed from a couple different groups. So she did a project that was sponsored by the Human Resources Office and then also sponsored by Vita Schmelgen in our history department. So Grace, have at it.
Okay, hi, I'm Grace, and I did this project. It's called Walk Gonzaga, and the best way to really describe Walk Gonzaga is, have you heard of like Walk America or what? So it's a very similar initiative where we'll have people walk around campus every day for a couple weeks, and then they'll learn about the buildings on campus and stuff like that. And so what I did was I did a lot of the research, and I put together the text, and I would find the pictures for it. So this is a picture of the Monaghan Mansion, which was on day 17, and I really wanted to put this picture in there, especially because it has this really fun story associated with it, because the Monaghan Mansion was believed to be possessed. It was believed that there were ghosts inside of the mansion. And so at one point, we actually had an exorcism happen inside of the music mansion. And it's still used today. We there's pianos in there. The music kids go in there. They practice their music. And yeah, I just thought it was really cool. That story didn't actually make it into Walk Gonzaga, but I really wanted to share it, so. And again, also another way to really describe it, like the best way that I have right now came from when I visited the Career Center, and they called it sort of like history meets physical activity kind of initiative, where we'll have people who are really interested in history, but they also want to get active, and so they'll get up and they'll learn about all these weird buildings that we have around campus. And so this is the Rice House, and also Dooley, which also has a fun story associated with it, because so Dooley was named after a philanthropist. It wasn't named after anyone really associated with Gonzaga, unlike a lot of the buildings here. And it used to be just this house. There used to be a house where Dooley was, and it used to house students. And at one point, the schools decided, we need more housing. And so they bought that house, and they turned it into Dooley House. But what happened was some of the students were very upset. The students who used to live in that house got very upset, and they protested it a little bit. But they didn't get to win, and so we have Dooley House. But we have these really interesting letters and articles about Dooley, where there was this one alum who wrote back to the woman who owned the house originally, like before it was this suite style, whatever that is. And so they wrote back and they said, I looked up who Dooley was, and I wouldn't have named that building after anyone else because they're amazing. And so they were just real stoked about the naming of Dooley, and I thought that was really cool that we just have articles about that. And so these are some pictures of construction. So when I was looking at pictures, I tried really hard to find pictures of when things were constructed or buildings that didn't exist anymore. So in the top left there, we have the original administration building, and then to the right is the construction of that. And then in the middle, that is from the 60s, it's from the 50s, I think, the construction of the Crosby Library, which is now the Crosby Center. And then also in the back of that, you can see this construction of Welch. And then down there, you can see the construction of the Foley Library, which is where a lot of this material was housed up in the archives. Last one? Is that the last slide?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, one thing that I will say that I think what I took out of this the most was that we have we're very rich history at Gonzaga, and our buildings have a lot to them, and there's a lot of very interesting stories, and now I think I can be a pretty awesome tour guide. And I can tell people about haunted mansions and the rumor of Bing Crosby pushing a piano off of DeSmet. It's not real. It's not real. The rumor said that he pushed it off in 1925, but Bing Crosby was gone by 1924. So just a little off. And yeah, I guess that's, yeah.
So
Yay.
Grace's contribution to this project, I think, is really important. She might have sold herself a little bit short. She did all of the text compilation. She wrote all of the historical descriptions for all of these buildings, and these PDFs were circulated with Gonzaga faculty and staff to encourage them to spend their lunch hour going out and getting some exercise and also learning a little bit more about the university. So she took university archives and put them into real life practice with university faculty and staff. She also had to think very carefully about what people could actually do within a half an hour or 40 minutes around campus. So there's a lot of interesting overlaps there. Let's see. Next up, I would like to invite Mayanna Harris and Christina Spring to come up and talk a little bit about their current project in the computer science department, supervised by Dr. Rob Bryant. And they're just on the entry stages, so pretty much all of their waking hours for the next academic year will be spent on this project. So come up, ladies, and tell us a little bit about it.
Hi, so I'm Christina, and this is Mayanna.
Hi. So our project is the GED Prep app, and the idea is to create a phone app that helps students who are practicing for the GED learn and practice their math skills because it's the most difficult subject for them to master.
Yeah, we're doing this. We proposed this senior project. All computer science majors do a senior project for their last year, and we went out and talked with one of our teachers, Dr. Bryant. He's really involved in the community in school districts. And so we went and talked with him because we wanted to do a learning app of some sort. And he was like, oh, he had just spoken to someone at the Next Generation Zone, and they were looking for someone to help them make a GED prep app. So we kind of switched focus and decided to work with the Next Generation Zone. We proposed the app, the senior project, and it was accepted. And so now we're working on design parts of it. We're submitting a project plan, and very soon we're going to start coding it.
Yeah. And so the Next Generation Zone is an alternative school that works with students from the age like 16 to 24 or something like that. And it helps them get the GED or pass their GED test if they haven't passed high school, if they dropped out or something. And then it also helps them move on to the workforce by going to trade school or getting into college so that they can move on with their lives. So these are examples of user stories. At the beginning of creating the app, we're required to create what we call a backlog of user stories, which is a giant list of all these little stories that tell us what the user is going to be able to do with our app. And so it describes each part. These are just a couple examples. Like the first one just basically says there's a home screen when the app is opened. And the second one is just a button. But we phrase them in this way so that we can view it from the user's point of view, and so we don't miss anything that the user wants to do or needs to do.
This sounds really strange, but this isn't the normal way that we do. These are basically our technical requirements for the app. And usually technical requirements are written in very technical language that not everyone can understand. But these are written so that we have what's called a sponsor, which is the person who has a vested interest in our app, and that's our point of contact at the Next Generation Zone. And they're written so that she understands it, like exactly what it means. So that's why these are so important, is because they're written in normal language that anyone can understand, and they're written in a certain format. So you see who needs whatever we're making, what they want it to do, and why they want it to do this thing. And so that's why these are so important. And that's an important part of, because this is for the digital humanities, and we're really computer science, but this is kind of computer science reaching out towards the humanities to integrate both of them.
So these are examples of our user interface drafts. And we wrote these drafts not just for us to decide where we're going to put things, but mostly so we could take examples to the classrooms where the students are and get their input and have them choose, like, oh, we want these kind of buttons, or we want this kind of sprite. And so really have them get involved, because it partially makes them more like focused, or I guess invested in the app, so that they'll use it more and actually practice their math. And it just helps them have confidence that, yeah, their opinion matters. And it's important to do that with students who haven't passed high school like on a normal level or haven't gotten to move on, because that usually means there's something wrong with their confidence or some kind of like problem with their support system. And so we really want to help them with more support.
Yeah. A lot of the students have what's called like math anxiety, or they really feel like their worth is connected to how they do in school, and they've never done well in school. They're often kinesthetic learners or learners who need that one-on-one attention that they didn't get at a traditional high school. So then they drop out, but they want to get their life on track. So they're at the Next Gen Zone, and that's what we're trying to help with. The sprite is connected to like achievements that they receive throughout the game to help build their confidence. So they receive little add-ons so they can accessorize their sprite and stuff like that. It was really great getting to meet and talk with the students because we had all these ideas for the app, and we'd been speaking with employees at the Next Generation Zone. But when we talked to the students, they were so excited. It was actually really incredible how much they care about this as well, especially because the students we talked to, most of them had already completed the GED.
Mm-hmm.
But they were excited. They were like, hey, I might use this app anyway, so it was really cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, ladies. And Mayanna and Christina are also very casual, but I should mention that all of the computer science students who are required to do a senior project often are approached with project ideas, but these two impressive young ladies came up with the idea all on their own and have gone after it. So well done. I'd like to turn the stage over away from PowerPoint. Away from PowerPoint, being the key feature, over to Megan Garcia and Teo Strava-Sirbu, who are going to share with us some multimodal composition that they did in an English composition class with Professor Jessica Halliday. So how are we pulling it up, ladies?
I wonder if you have to plug it in over there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, why don't you head over?
Okay.
We should have the tech on hand. Here, let me see. Sorry, again, this would be something that would be set up beforehand if we weren't sitting on the sidewalk watching fire trucks, but
I can introduce it.
yeah, that'd be great.
As our last project last year for our English class, we had to come up with a topic that kind of mattered, not like in an English sense, but kind of in a more like issues in society, and then come up with a video, and we will show you the last 30 seconds of it, which is basically what we wanted our audience to take away from it. And we talked about chickens and our consumption of chickens and how there's a lot of environmental issues that chickens cause. I don't know if you've heard the statistic of there's more chickens than humans in the world, which is kind of crazy. And so we just talked about more organic sourcing and how you can, you just go last 30 seconds.
It's 4:59.
And what you can do to help the situation, I guess. You are.
Okay.
Also consuming feces, toxic chemicals, and the germs that the chemicals fail to kill. So how can we as a community change the way that we process our chicken? Be aware of where your food comes from. Support the local farms. Size of portion.
Okay. So that's just a very small clip from our presentation. So we definitely did a lot of research about, we had a lot of trouble formulating an idea at first because we wanted to relate it to food and something about humanity and the process of our consumption of food and nutrition was something that we were really interested in. Then we found a way to connect it through
Video.
yeah, through a video.
So let's see. Sorry. So I'm so sorry. I guess one of the questions was, what did we get out of this project? This actually, there's a lot of footage in here that I don't know if you've heard of Food Inc. or Fed Up, those kinds of documentaries. And there's a lot of kind of gruesome footage, I would say. And this project actually turned me to be vegetarian. So I haven't eaten meat since we finished this. And we all signed the petition at the end, and I'm hoping that a lot of our classmates did. So I definitely also see value in like this type of media, using video to portray ideas, and as like we're in this age of technology, I think it's a lot easier to process information that comes from a video as like opposed to an essay, especially our generation, it's kind of hard to focus like through an entire essay, and I think it's a lot more powerful using different kinds of media.
Thanks, ladies.
Yeah.
You can see how impressively they manipulate digital dilemmas in front of them also. Well done. For our last student presenter, I'd like to invite Andy Bueller, the editor-in-chief of the Gonzaga Bulletin, to come up and talk about digital humanities with the Gonzaga Bulletin. Andy?
Did you want to get up this way?
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and pull up our
Yeah,
website.
that'd be perfect.
So right now, the bulletin's tasked with, not only we print every week on Thursdays, and so in the past couple of years, the move has kind of been, hey, we're at a really exciting time right now, in that a lot of our content needs to be turned to be presented to an online and digital audience. Figured out I started as the editor-in-chief. I started prepping last May, and in August I really started to look at our stats, and it was like, okay, well, like 60% of our click-throughs on our website came through Facebook. Just about the other 40% came through Twitter. Social media is a huge drive in people viewing our website, and students, although students do enjoy picking up the paper every Thursday when it's passed out, and like the pickups usually do pretty well, we really wanted to reach students where they were, and that's on smartphones, that's on tablets, that's on computers. And so there's been a couple projects that we've kind of rolled out to help do that, and right now we're talking about clowns. So for all the families in town, it shouldn't be a problem, according to campus security. Students might say otherwise, but no, so we, if we go to the bottom of the website, so this is last year. So I started as my freshman and sophomore year, I started at the Bulletin in sports, and I was the sports editor my sophomore year, and last year I really wanted to take the sports section kind of into the digital age, and so something that we'd started to do was video components and audio components of our content. We had writers that were going and talking to athletes from every team, and providing consistent weekly coverage of Gonzaga athletics, whether it be varsity or club sports. And so we started to roll out kind of our podcast network. So I started a podcast called Zags on 3, and it's about 45-minute podcast every week. And we're still looking to kick it up for this year. It hasn't started back up again. But it was very basketball centric, because that's what students on this campus really care about, basketball. And so we were able to kind of take the interviews, take the content and the story ideas that we had that had been turned into print stories, and say, how can we turn these into audio stories and video stories? And so it actually is something that I learned. It went back to my freshman year in English composition with Professor Gray. We learned how to, we were presented with, three different multimedia story or essays, and one of them, the two that I took the most away from were audio and video, and so we had to tell a story, we had to cut it up in a software and present it kind of in an audio format, and then do the same thing with video, like the last two students showed. Very similar. And so it was actually kind of that base layer of knowledge that really kind of propelled, it started to get the wheel turning in my head, like, hey, we can really get, our content at the Bulletin out to students in a multimedia fashion. And so that's kind of what we've done. It's very simple. This is an example of, last year we sent reporters to the WCC tournament, and I'll just play about 5 seconds of this because, you're already hearing me talking, so I don't want to put you through any more of that. It's just us breaking down the game that just happened. I kind of look like one of the scary clowns on campus with my mug, but no. But we really kind of have seen in the first 2 months of this year with the way our staff has retooled. We've put a lot more staff presence in digital. So we have 2 specific digital media editors as opposed to 1 who just worked like once a week and just made sure that our print, everything that we put out in print went online. And so now we have a digital team that takes all our stories happening on campus. For example, we had, for the first presidential debate, the GU Debate Club hosted a watch party and kind of a recap in the Wolf Auditorium in Jepson. And so we sent 2 reporters, 1 writer, and myself. And I went there and kind of took video, talked to students, and kind of got students' reaction. Hey, how has this debate changed or swayed which way you wanted to vote? What's it like being a first-time voter in this election? And so there's a lot of stuff going on campus that we feel can be reached to our audience in a multimedia setting and can really get to their smartphones. Our students, staff, and faculty can go and pick up their phone and be on Facebook and see the Gonzaga Bulletin and see our videos, see our audio stories, and pick up our print on Thursdays. And so the goal has kind of been to come up with the most well-rounded coverage we can in today's digital age. I feel and we feel that that's best served by kind of learning and tackling the multimedia storytelling. And that base layer was really provided in the English composition class freshman year. So.
Thanks, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I'll have to know why all the students are looking at their phones in my classes to read the bulletin. Nobody's believing that. So we have some remaining time, and I wanted to spend our attention here thinking about what does doing digital humanities mean at a Jesuit, Ignatian, Catholic university. And all of these fabulous students gestured in some way to what they got out of doing these projects with a digital platform. So I want to ask you all, now I get to interview a little bit. I want to ask you all, what do you think digital humanities means? Because many of you didn't start these projects or approach these projects with the framework of digital humanities. So what do you think digital humanities is, and how is your project a digital humanities project? Any takers?
I'll start. Well, for me, I'm a finance major, so I had don't do technology in terms of like videos and pictures and everything. For me, it was a broadening experience. I got to learn about these people that you never hear about, I've never even heard of the King Islands before. So it's people that you get to learn about and connecting them with our school's history because we have everything in our library. And not even, I didn't even know it was there. So in terms of digital humanities, for me, it's about learning about everyone, especially in today. It's like equal opportunity and learning about everyone in terms of just knowing their past, knowing their history, knowing where they came from, and knowing how it connects to me at this school today with their past.
Fantastic. Any other takers thinking about how your project is a digital humanities project?
Yeah, I guess going off of what you were saying, usually in school, or at least like your first 2 years, your core classes, you're learning about math, science, English, history, that kind of stuff. Digital humanities, I guess you get to learn about stuff that's happening in the world, like as we were talking about, like the issue with like chickens and like the health issues and environmental issues, and putting that in like a digital form makes it just much more accessible, I think. So.
I think that I started off like learning how to edit videos and stuff in high school, and it was more like story based or like just factual based. I was always the one to be like, hey, I'll edit that video for you guys, like I don't mind. But when I got into multimodal English class last semester, I was able to kind of use that talent that I have with video editing to like form like a call to action, which was much more it was much more impactful for me to edit this video than compared to like a Spanish project that I did in high school. So that was my takeaway from that.
It seems like your guys' project really connects with the building a more just and humane world.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the
criteria. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm showing it right behind your heads, but we have these 4 key characteristics of an Ignatian vision and a Jesuit vision, and I'm curious how you all think how your projects aren't just digital humanities projects, but how they fit into the component of being at a Jesuit university. And some of you talked about this in your presentation, but it's worth thinking about a lot of the language that we see in our university mission statement and our Jesuit vision here. So seeing life and the whole universe as a gift calling forth wonder and gratefulness. I'm in wonderment over you all and grateful for your great work all the time. Giving ample scope to the imagination and emotion as well as intellect, and stressing freedom, need for discernment and responsible action. I love hearing that. I felt like I was issuing a call to action. And empowering people to become leaders in service, that great men and women for others and whole persons of solidarity that we really care about in our mission here. So I wonder, how do you think your work intersects with this Jesuit Ignatian vision, ladies and gentlemen?
I really like the empowering others to become leaders. Yeah. Empowering others to become leaders in service, and I think our app really does that because there are leaders everywhere, and the fact that some people are getting trapped and they need to move on and find their path in life, and we're helping them do that, they might be the next great leader. Like, we don't know that, and we're providing them the opportunity to get to where they need to be, and hopefully once they get to where they can help others, they'll turn around and do the same.
That's fantastic. Grace's Walk Gonzaga app, for me, when I first became aware of it, really struck me as fitting all 4 of these components, in that we're invited to walk around Gonzaga and wonder at our history and ridiculous exorcism stories, while also really paying attention to learning the history of Gonzaga intellectually and engaging emotionally and also physically. So we have all of these great projects that really blend together all of these Jesuit and humanistic values. I'm also curious, ladies and gentlemen, some of you spoke to this in your presentation, but I'm curious what doing this project in a digital mode brings to the table that doing it in an analog or old school paper format wouldn't have brought to the table. Did you take anything away, or how does it feel different as opposed to writing an essay for, Ginger's class? What do we think?
I can speak to that. When you pick up and read a paper, and when you're writing a newspaper article, it's really hard to take someone's quote and what they say to you and the emotion that goes into that and really provide kind of a written context to that. And so with video and audio, I mean, there's so much that goes unsaid, that is so many messages that you hear and you see in the look in someone's face and the tone in someone's voice, that when you're listening or when you're watching someone talking, that really just amplify the story and really just drive home kind of the raw emotion of what you're writing about.
I'm struck very much by the fact that Mayanna and Christina's app wouldn't exist if there wasn't a digital context for it. And some of those test prep books are awfully expensive and wouldn't be that easily accessible to their target audience. So the digital platform makes it possible where it wouldn't have been otherwise. I'm also struck by the fact that Teo and Megan's call to action and intervention probably wouldn't have happened without this digital platform. You can go around and tell people that maybe they should be a little bit more ethically aware of how they source their chicken, but that's a very different platform than posting it on YouTube and making it publicly available. So we've got a little bit of time left, about 15 minutes. I want to make sure that we have some scope for questions from anyone. Does anyone have a question for either myself or any of these great panelists? Just hoping for no more fire alarms? I'll take it. Well, let's give them a round of applause because they've done such fantastic work for us.